Hello, everyone, and welcome. So, we are back today. We're going to talk about the hormonal changes and symptoms that are related to those hormonal changes in perimenopause. This is a question that I get asked a lot. So, what are the symptoms? Why is my body doing this? And then, what are the hormones that are contributing to this that are causing these issues? And what can we do about this? So, perimenopause is that time when it's basically just before going through menopause. Every woman goes through this, and it starts either some women can start as early as 35, late 30s. Most women start in their 40s, like either early, mid to late. And it goes until you reach menopause, which is 12 months without a period. And then you're considered postmenopausal. Now, it is not an inevitability that you will have symptoms through this time or that they will be very pronounced. Some women barely notice any changes, might have some, irregular cycles. Maybe their cycles get a little bit shorter, then they get a little bit longer, maybe a little bit heavier bleeding, but nothing like dramatic that impacts their life that they seek out care for. And then other women have debilitating symptoms, things like hot flashes, fatigue, insomnia, low libido, painful sex, hair loss, uh, palpitations, dizziness. These things can really be impactful to the woman's quality of life. And she seeks out care and doesn't always get really great answers. In fact, there's a lot of women who just get dismissed, or they'll give you birth control and the antidepressant and send you on your way. And it's really frustrating because this is a time of life when we've gone through so much, right? If you're in your 40s, you've been through some stuff, right? And we're adult women who have kept it together this long, and now things are just kind of starting to unravel. And it can be very, very frustrating. So one of my missions here at Antigravity Wellness is to empower these women and women coming into this age to know what's going on with their bodies and what they can do about it. Because you do not need to suffer in silence, and you do not need to go through this period in misery. And especially as it relates to later on in life, if we don't address these things now, and if we don't get on top of your health now, it becomes that much harder the older we get, right? So I am Dr. Nicole Smith. I am the founder of Antigravity Wellness. I am board certified in family practice and orthopedics, certified personal trainer, and I'm the founder of Antigravity Wellness. It's been around for, it's been almost 3 years now. It's crazy. So my own little private practice, and I've been a nurse practitioner for about 7 years or so. And then I've been in healthcare for over a decade. So I have a little bit of experience with that. And then in addition to the fact that I am a perimenopausal woman, I am 42 years old. I will be 43 in November. And I have been noticing some changes for sure. And I've had probably a pretty easy time as an adult woman as far as my cycles and everything are concerned. But my story is very similar to many other people's stories. I was on birth control for at least a decade in my 20s, because that's what you did, right? If you're like going to be active. And then there's other women that I know who started it way earlier when they were like 14, because they're having really, really heavy, painful periods or really bad symptoms. And instead of going, I wonder what's going on there, let's find out, they were just thrown on a birth control. I said, well, here you go. Here's the fix, except it's not really a fix. It was just a Band-Aid. So now we're coming into this age where, some of us had babies, some of us haven't. And we're trying to figure out, what's going on with our cycles? Why are things changing? And if you're coming off of birth control, any of those issues that you had, if you were put on it for reasons other than contraceptive, if you were put on it to control symptoms, those symptoms usually come back with a vengeance because the underlying causes have not been addressed. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that today, and all the changes that you see with perimenopause. So let me get over to my screen. Here we go. All right, so before we get started, this is going to be a new little practice I want to do with you guys, because we are all running on a lot of stress. Chronic fatigue is something that is also super prevalent in the women that come to see me at Antigravity. and the women I talk to in general. So we're going to start with some deep breathing. You have you breathe at least, 24,000 times a day, but we very infrequently take deep breaths. So that actually keeps us in this fight or flight mode all day long. And we don't even realize that we're doing it. But if you notice that you're doing things like yawning a lot, sighing, things like that, or just kind of feeling like you can't catch your breath, it's because you're not deep breathing. That's one of the things that can be going on there. So that's step one. Let's just take some deep breaths. So hand on your heart and on your belly. If you're listening to the podcast or whatever, and you're driving, obviously keep a hand on the wheel. And I want you to think about blowing up your belly like a balloon. And I know women, we don't like doing this, but that pulls the diaphragm down and it'll actually get your full lung capacity to expand. So take a deep, slow breath in through your nose and hold it for a second. And then breathe out through your mouth. Oh, and let it all go, girl. Let it go. One more. Deep breath in. Let it all go. Let it all go. There you go. One more. Do it with me. I know you think this is silly. Do it. Let it all go. There you go. Oh my gosh. I love that so much. Okay. Whenever you're feeling stressed out, just do that. It will really, really help you several times a day. All right. So we're going to get started. And the best way to do this is to make sure that you're paying attention, because that way you don't have to listen to it again. I'm going to go through some really good information here, and I'm going to try not to take up too much of your time. I know everyone is super busy, so I appreciate you being here and taking the time out of your day to improve your health. It's so, so important, ladies. I know we do not put ourselves first, right? But we have to. We're coming into an age where this is non-negotiable anymore. We don't have a choice. We have to take care of ourselves, or we're just going to continue to go down that road of feeling sick, worse, getting worse, and really not being able to take care of the things that we want to be able to take care of. So this picture right here with this baby and all of the stuff here, this really kind of summarizes how I felt in nursing school when I was learning about the endocrine system, which is the hormones in your body that are basically the chemical messengers that send signals from one cell to the other, from one organ to another, to tell them what to do, what needs to happen, what's going on. Without this communication, the body will not function. So we need the endocrine system. It's super important, but it felt, especially at the time in nursing school, I was like, this is beyond me. This is so complicated. And I think that's because I'm such a visual person. I would actually draw out all of the systems and all of the drugs and where they, like the individual components and where they came from. I had these giant sheets of paper that I would draw all of this stuff out so I could actually get it from the textbook into my head. So that was like my way of being able to transfer it into my brain in such a way that I understood it, and then could put that back on the test and then understand it too for my clients and my patients. Because it's one thing to be able to memorize something, but to be able to actually understand the process behind it. And that's the key that I really found through nursing school, if any of you are in that situation. When you understand the process that's happening, and you can walk through, like, for instance, the circulatory system, the heart, like how blood flows through and the pumps and how all those things work and the valves and everything. And once you can conceptualize that and understand how that works, you start to be able to go, so if you have this disease process, then I could see how this, and this would be symptoms of that and how that would work. So it really helps to be able to, because you can't memorize everything unless you have a photographic memory. That's very rare. I don't have one of those. I am not one of those people. It's always been hard for me. I've always had to put extra work into knowing all of this stuff. So this is kind of how I felt about the endocrine system: estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, cortisol, thyroid, and all of the many others. We're just going to touch on a very few of them. So, we've got the master gland, the pineal, actually the hypothalamus, which is kind of like, there was a really good analogy of like a gardener. So, and I'm going to go back to gardening. So you have like the master gardener is like the hypothalamus. So like plans everything out. It's got the big view picture of what's going on down there, right? And then you have the second in command, which is the pituitary gland. And that one tells everything where stuff goes. So it like helps to plan out. So hypothalamus has the whole big picture, and then the pituitary gland sends out the instructions like, hey, you do this. So they're the delegator, they're the manager, right? And then you've got the different areas. You've got the thyroid gland that's responsible for growth. So if it isn't working properly, things won't grow properly. It'll be stifled, and things will be messed up there. And then we've got the adrenal glands on top of the kidneys. So those are like the stress response and rest and digest. So it really controls that kind of system right there. And I'm so simplifying this. I know that. So if you're in medicine, you're probably like, oh my God, Nicole. And then we've got the ovaries, which is the flower. That's the flowering. So that is the pinnacle, right? We want that flower to come up every month, right? We want that flower until it's time for it to retire in menopause. Okay. So you can kind of conceptualize it that way. So let's talk about the prevalence of perimenopause. It's only growing as our population is aging. It affects millions of women worldwide, typically between the ages of 35 upwards to 55. Whenever you go through menopause, then that's over. So this peri is before menopause, the period before menopause. And honestly, this is something that wasn't really talked about. Like I didn't know anything about this, even like through nursing school, they might've mentioned it. And we talked a little bit about menopause and that was it. So this is not something that's talked about enough. And I'm really trying to change that. And it's been my passion as I am in it. And a lot of the women that I know are in it, or going to go through it, or have been through it. And we just need more education around this. So it's a time of empowerment, I say. So this can last for several years, and then you transition into menopause. Nearly all women will experience perimenopause, yet awareness and understanding remain very low. When we say nearly all, those that don't experience perimenopause are ones that are go through surgical menopause, meaning they don't ever have the chance to go through a peri period because they go from being in the regular cycling period, however regular that is for their body. A lot of women have irregular cycling periods, which is a marker of health. Read the book, The Fifth Vital Sign. I love that book so much, and it teaches you so much about your body and how things should work. She's brilliant. So Fifth Vital Sign, definitely pick up that book. But so the other thing that can happen is we can go through surgical, or they call it iatrogenic, which means that it was caused by medicine, basically. Surgical removal of the uterus and or ovaries can cause early menopause. There can be cancer, there can be trauma, there can be not so much drugs, but it can happen. So any of these things can kind of launch a woman into menopause a lot sooner. So the impact on women's lives: physical health, symptoms like hot flashes, night sweats, weight gain can disrupt daily life. Increased risk of conditions such as osteoporosis and cardiovascular disease, as well as dementia. Emotional and mental health: we have mood swings, anxiety, and depression can really affect personal and professional relationships. And in fact, I heard a stat the other day that actually the risk for depression and anxiety going up also correlates during this time with increased risk for suicide. So that's really something to be aware of. This is a serious issue that we need to address. And there can be cognitive changes like brain fog, which can impact work performance and quality of life. Sexual health: changes in libido and vaginal dryness can strain intimate relationships. So it's just really the quality of life of the woman and her and everyone that's around her, honestly, because if she's not feeling well, she cannot be her best self, and that's going to affect all of her relationships around her. So we're going to talk about the key hormones involved, and then we're also going to talk about some other hormones. So first of all, we got estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. It's pretty well known. There are 3 different estrogens that we really look at, but we're just going to talk about overall estrogen, and then there's progesterone, and then testosterone as well. And women actually have more testosterone than they do estrogen and progesterone, but it's still significantly less than what men have. So don't worry about bulking up like men. We don't have the hormones for it, girls. So estrogen, the role of estrogen in the female body, it helps to control the menstrual cycle. So it is the proliferative stage. So in the beginning of the cycle, follicular phase, first phase, estrogen goes up as it's building up the uterine lining. So it is in charge of building. So it's laying it down. It's in charge of all that building. And then later we're going to talk about progesterone comes in and helps to slow down that building and just kind of like maintain until we go, okay, nope, no implantation, no pregnancy. So now we're going to drop off and we're going to let it all go. And then we restart rebirth again the next month, right? It helps to keep bones strong and healthy, and it also affects mood and energy levels. There are estrogen receptors throughout the entire body. We got taught a lot that it was only about the uterus and the ovaries and maybe a little bit about the breast tissue, but like that was it, right? Just to make babies. We're just baby machines, right? Bitter at all about that. But it is all over the body. We have estrogen receptors in the brain, in the vascular system, in the heart, in the gut. It affects every single system, in the bones, in the bone remodeling. So it's super, super, super important. And this is why we see increased risk for heart disease, osteoporosis, dementia. We have issues with glucose metabolism as we age because the estrogen levels are dropping. The protective factor that estrogen gave us is going away. So as estrogen levels go up and down during perimenopause, so this is the roller coaster effect. Like it can, and it can be in relation to progesterone. So it's not necessarily that, like, especially in the beginning, that progesterone will start to drop. So we don't have as much of that inhibition. And so instead, the estrogen levels stay high instead of like they're here, but then the progesterone comes up and kind of helps to dampen that effect. It doesn't come up as high. So this feels a lot higher over here in the estrogen level. And you get those symptoms of estrogen dominance where you have like a longer cycle, heavier periods, a lot more pain, things like that can happen. But then as we get towards the later part of perimenopause, so that's like early perimenopause, start to have longer cycles, a little bit lower progesterone, start to have some symptoms, and then mid to late, we start to see estrogen levels. They can start to drop, then they can maybe come back up again. It's kind of all over the place. So and especially as like they drop, the brain goes, oh, hey, we don't have enough. It's going to start sending that signal. So we'll talk about LH and FSH, how those signals start really ramping up to tell the ovaries, hey, you're not doing your job. And the ovaries are like, I'm kind of winding down here. I'm kind of done. So you're going to continue to have those drops in the estrogen level despite those signals telling the ovaries to make more. So these changes can make you feel different every day. You could just like be on this roller coaster, and every single day it could be a little bit different. It's so fun, right? It can be really, really exhausting. So anything that we can do to help the woman to regulate her system and make sure that this is like a nice, gentle walk into the into menopause, as opposed to like, stumbling down the mountain, as many women do feel going into menopause. So we're going to try and prevent here. So the effects of decreased estrogen levels, we have hot flashes, which is the feeling that, sudden feelings of heat that can make you sweat. It's like all of a sudden somebody turned the heat up and you're like, why am I the only one having a personal summer over here? Vaginal dryness can be pretty pronounced. It can make sex very uncomfortable, and then that can lead to other intimacy problems. There can also be changes to the microflora in the vagina that cause increased risk for UTIs. So you have healthy bacteria and yeast and everything like that in your gut, but also in everywhere else in your mouth, on your skin, and also women in the vagina. And that helps to actually keep the pH balance at a proper level. And when estrogen drops, our healthy bacteria also goes down, and our pH level gets altered into a way that can cause an increased risk for things like UTIs. So the other changes we can see mood swings, trouble sleeping, skin that feels dry, itchy ears. There are estrogen receptors in your ears, guys, like so crazy. You may feel tired and have less energy. Insomnia has a lot to do with that, and just your changing levels there. So progesterone, progesterone is actually the first one that kind of starts to decline. So the role of progesterone, it helps to regulate the menstrual cycle, like we talked about. So it's kind of like that dampening part where, the estrogen is high in the beginning of the phase, of the follicular phase, and then you ovulate, and then the progesterone kicks in during the luteal phase or late phase. And it goes quite high. And what its job is to really make sure that the lining of the uterus is nice and fluffy, and is ready to receive the egg, and to, if the egg is fertilized, or if the egg comes through and is fertilized, then it will continue to stay high. And progesterone is responsible for, like, if we don't have enough progesterone, miscarriages are really high risk. So having enough progesterone is very important for that. But also, again, there are progesterone receptors all over the body. So it can actually impact the entire body. So it prepares the body for pregnancy, and it also helps to keep mood stable. One of the things that can happen is with that insomnia issue, if I give someone, especially, we check their levels, of course. I don't give hormones without checking hormone levels. There are some places out there that do that. I don't agree with that practice, because there can be so many causes of symptoms. You can't necessarily always diagnose someone based on their symptoms alone. A really good history is very important, and we need to know what the symptoms are, but we also need labs. Test, don't guess. So very, very important we do that. But if we have a woman who is complaining of insomnia, trouble getting to sleep, trouble staying asleep, the progesterone levels are on the low end. Sometimes giving them progesterone at night can really help with their sleep and just help them, like, chill. It's the chill one, right? Progesterone levels during perimenopause start to drop. It's the first one to drop. Generally speaking, these changes can be slow, or they can happen very quickly. Like, all of a sudden, you don't feel for it. And that actually happened to me when I was 37. I all of a sudden had these changes in my PMS symptoms, and I was like, what is going on? And they would start 9 days before they had been before. Like, I normally, it was like 2 to 3 days, I'd like, not feel so great, and then things would start to be fine. 9 days before, and I was miserable, and I'm like, I cannot function. Like, this is taking away, like, almost a week and a half out of every single month. This is not, I can't, no. There's some women that live that way, though, and I can empathize with that now. Like, I never really had that problem until that point. And so we did some more testing, found that my thyroid was sluggish, my progesterone was low, I had some things that were off, my DHEAS was low, my cortisol was actually in the toilet, because I was so far into being chronically stressed that it had actually fully downregulated itself. So been working on that, and it takes time, but definitely feeling better, doing way better. So the drop in progesterone can cause very noticeable symptoms, like I was mentioning. So, all right. So the effects of decreased progesterone include irregular periods that can become unpredictable, mood swings. You can feel happy one moment and sad the next. And then other changes, you can have trouble sleeping, increased anxiety and stress, and you can feel more tired than usual. If anyone feels that way, your progesterone might be going low. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about testosterone, super important hormone for women as well. It helps to maintain muscle and strength. It boosts energy level, and it supports a healthy libido, or interest in sex. So testosterone levels during perimenopause, they can start to decrease. The changes are usually gradual, but noticeable over time. And this drop can affect overall well-being. Definitely something we want to address. So the effects of decreased testosterone, we have reduced libido, which is less interest in sex. I've had women who are like, I just don't care anymore. And they're like, in my brain, I think I want to care because, my partner cares, but like, I just don't care, that I just don't want it anymore. And they used to have a sex drive. So if you never had one to begin with, and that's something different, but if you used to have one and now you like could care less, or in fact, you don't even want it, like, don't touch me, that's a sign that your hormones are off. So not so much that, getting out of the sexuality thing, but if you're having symptoms, then that's a sign of underlying health. So we need to pay close attention to that. Fatigue, Even testosterone also can cause fatigue. All of these things can make you tired, right? Other changes, loss of muscle strength, muscle mass, feeling less motivated, and this can affect mood and confidence. And the really bad thing about the loss of muscle strength and mass is that it will also affect your resting metabolic rate. The less muscle mass you have, the more risk you are for bone fractures, and the lower your resting metabolic rate is, which means it'll be harder for you to keep weight off. You can eat the same amount of calories and gain weight when before you were not. So that's a problem, right? Especially when we're talking about, risk for heart disease and stuff. So other hormonal changes. So we talked about follicular stimulating hormone, which is FSH, and luteinizing hormone, which is LH. Those signals come from the pituitary gland up in the brain. Cortisol and stress response. So those come from the adrenal glands that sit on top of the kidneys. And then the thyroid hormones, which come from the thyroid gland, which sits right there in your neck, responsible for your metabolism. So let's talk about FSH and LH. FSH helps eggs grow in the ovaries. It's important for the start of the menstrual cycle. LH triggers the release of an egg from the ovary and helps regulate the menstrual cycle. So you see a nice big spike in LH when you ovulate, and then FSH helps the egg grow in the ovaries. So that's that constant signal. So the FSH is the one that's really going to start to go up there as we go into perimenopause and into menopause. They both go up, but FSH is one that we really watch there. So FSH and LH become higher and more unpredictable. These changes can make periods irregular, so they're also contributing to the problem. Thank you very much. Higher levels of FSH and LH are the body's way of trying to stimulate the ovaries. Remember, it's a signal going, hey, we need you to do this. We need you to plant the flowers. And the ovaries are like, well, we're out of seeds, so we're not going to do that anymore. So the fluctuations can lead to symptoms like hot flashes and night sweats. So let's talk about cortisol and stress response. Again, super, super important. I have yet to meet someone who isn't affected by this. And I definitely suffered with this. So cortisol is a hormone released when you're stressed and it's also released just naturally. So if you don't have any cortisol at all, that's not good. You'll die. So we do need some cortisol, but when there's too much of it and it's sustained and our body can't keep up with it, that's a problem. So during perimenopause, cortisol levels can increase. Hormonal changes make the body more sensitive to stress. So effects of increased stress and cortisol on overall health: fatigue. Are we seeing a theme? Feeling tired more often, weight gain, especially around the belly area, mood changes, increased anxiety and irritability, sleep problems, trouble falling or staying asleep, weaker immune system, getting sick more easily, and then bone health. It can lead to weaker bones over time, leading to bone fractures and osteoporosis. So what do we do about all this? Well, at Antigravity Wellness, we take a comprehensive care approach. So functional lab testing is something I always recommend for everybody, personalized to you, what you need, and then creating a treatment guide based on those results and your goals, your lifestyle, all that kind of stuff, like your dietary needs. It just has to be comprehensive. It can't just be, here's your pill, I'll see you next year. I don't like to practice like that. I don't think it works. So holistic treatment options, nutrition, exercise, supplements, hormone replacement, mental well-being, stress, sleep, all of the things have to come together in order to create this whole plan. And you can do it in a stepwise fashion, but if it's the whole puzzle. So it's like a tower of Jenga. And if you pull too many pieces out, it's going to collapse, right? So we need it all as tightly, nicely compacted as possible. So what I use is what I have called the Antigravity Wellness Hormone Harmony Method, which is a 4-step process to get to the root cause with functional labs, do a dietary plan that addresses a lot of nutritional deficiencies, gut health issues, weight, all of the things, exercise that will actually help you to build your metabolism as opposed to just tearing it down or causing more inflammation in the body because you're not moving. And then a holistic plan that really kind of brings everything together. It includes supplements. It includes hormone replacement if that's appropriate. It includes other medications if they're needed. I I toe the line over both. Like I will do both things. And I think both are really appropriate. Western medicine is amazing in its ability to save lives. And I've seen amazing things happen in the hospital and to get really quick symptom control, because when you are exhausted, when you're so depressed, you can't even move, when your blood pressure is so high that you could stroke out, like these things are life threatening and we need to step in and we need to be quick about that. Going after the root cause still needs to happen, but that is a longer process and it can take time. So having these medications when we need them to step in and quickly get at control of the situation so that we can work on these underlying things, I think is very important. And it's part of a holistic plan that you work out with your provider. So it's a very intimate thing back and forth between a provider that you trust and yourself having enough information to make informed decisions about your healthcare and what you want. And it should be your choice. All right, so if you stayed to the end, congratulations, you've made it. And I have a free guide for you. I put together Understanding Your Hormone Effects of Perimenopause. So if you are on Facebook and YouTube right now, and you can comment Perry, or if you're watching the replay, comment Perry, and I will send that to you. If you are listening to the podcast or watching there on Spotify, you just can look at the show notes, and I will go ahead and give that to you right there. And then if you are a perimenopause woman who wants to know more about the services offered at Antigravity Wellness here in Washington State, you can schedule a free discovery call to talk to me and see how I can help. The link is in the description. I also do coaching for women who are not in Washington State, but I cannot diagnose, do labs, prescribe, or anything like that because I'm only licensed to practice as a nurse practitioner here at Washington State currently, but we'll work on that. We'll get more services available to you guys. Thank you so much for your time and attention. I really hope that this was valuable for you, that you took away something that could help you. And I appreciate you all being here. I hope you have a great rest of your day. And if you're up in the Northwest, I hope you are staying cool because it is hot out there. All right, bye.